Good morning, everyone. Janine Labella here with Labella Planners. We are filming our 16th episode of Behind the Bouquet. And I have the pleasure of being at Halstead Real Estate's office in Manhattan today. I am speaking with Susan Katz and Amber Daz. We are so excited to have them on. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for being here.
How are you guys?
Awesome. Great.
Thank you. So, if you do not know, Halstead Real Estate is a big real estate firm in the city, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to chat with a realtor as well as a mortgage and financial professional to educate myself and you on things you need to know about buying properties. If you're getting married, if you're living with somebody, these are things that are down the road, so you're going to want to know some tids and bits and learn a little bit of fun facts, that everything you need to know. So here we are. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into these fields.
Well, I've been selling real estate for 25 or 30 years, partly in Westport, Connecticut, and then the last 10 years or so in Manhattan. My dad was a home builder, my mom was a real estate broker, my brother's a real estate attorney. I have a master's in landscape architecture. And it just kind of is the thing that I always knew how to do, even if I didn't know I was going to do it.
So you eat, sleep, breathe real estate.
It's just the way I grew up, and it's what I know.
Amazing. And Amber?
I've been in the mortgage business for 10 years now. I got into it after college. I graduated with a business degree, and I had a friend in the business, different position. And a friend worked actually at GuardHill Financial, where I currently have been for my last 10 years. And she said, give it a try. And I gave it a try, and I loved it. And here I am 10 years later.
Nice. So let's just dive right in. I feel like the idea of buying a property or a home is so stressful to begin with, and then add Manhattan on top of it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Woo!
Yes.
So what is the first thing that someone has to do when they're like, oh, you know what, honey, maybe we should buy something?
Yeah. Well, the reasons you want to buy something is because financially, for your future, you want to get your foot in the door here. Because once you own something, then as your family grows, as your life changes, you can trade up, trade down, but you have an asset and you got your foot in the door. How do you do that, though? Because it's probably the largest financial transaction you've ever made, and it's personal. It's about, where do I want to live? What does this say about me? How do I feel when I come home? How do I feel when I open the door? And then if you would have a partner or a spouse, then you have to figure it out together. It's not just what do I want, it's what do we want, what works for us as a couple. So you take the financial piece and the emotional piece, and it's a very complicated, interesting business transaction. And I think that's why I like it. I think if it was all numbers or all emotions, I mean, I'm not a therapist and I'm not a financial advisor, but there's some combination of the two.
Right.
To help people figure out, there's the variables of space, light, location, price.
Okay.
And how those variables work for you is different for every person. How do we solve that equation for you to get the right thing for you? So that's what I like to help people do.
So it seems like you take a very personalized approach to chatting with your couples.
Yeah.
Is there a beginning questionnaire that you ask them that maybe doesn't have financials on it? What specifics they're looking for, if they want a corner apartment or a penthouse?
You know what, when I've done that, I get a list. I get, a 2-page list. And I'll look at the list, and the clients will say to me, here's our list, and our budget is, say, $800,000. I say, great, your list costs $1.5 million. So we either change the list or we change the price. But that's up to you. You tell me what direction we go in.
That's funny. That's what my wedding's similarities here.
Okay.
The Pinterest board, you just pile it on.
Right.
And then you're like, that's what it costs.
Right. So it's not that I'm not listening to you. I'm listening, but I have to tell you what the reality is of the market.
Mm-hmm.
And then we figure it out.
That's important. So honesty as well. You know, and I think I know Susan. I've known her for years. I think that's one of her top qualities. straightforward honesty, and it's what you
Curly
really.
hair, straight talk.
Yeah, okay. I forgot the most important part.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that you should really look for when
Yes.
having a
You
realtor.
should look for someone you feel like, here's what you're saying, but also understands, also knows their business better than you know, because this isn't your business. This is my business. This is what I do. I don't know how to do your business.
Right.
So I can bring my experience and my knowledge to help you reach your goals. That's the idea.
Okay. And for someone who doesn't happen to know a realtor, and they just call Halstead, am I pronouncing it?
Halstead.
Halstead.
Yeah.
Halstead. Does the receptionist just kind of match appropriately, or how does that work?
Pretty much everyone knows somebody in real estate. Doesn't mean you want to work with them, because if your best friend is a realtor, they're going to know every single thing about your finances.
Right.
They're going to know exactly to the penny how much money you have, how much money you earn. You don't always want your best friend to know that. It's also rather stressful, can be. I mean, it is, even when everything goes beautifully, it's stressful, and it can change your relationship.
Good point.
You know, just keep that in mind. But ask around your friends, ask your family members. People now, of course, look on Facebook and Instagram, but I like personal recommendations. So ask your friends, talk to family members, talk to people who've recently bought or sold something, see what their experience was, and then meet a bunch of people and see who you connect with and how you can relate to them.
And so now you're in the Manhattan market. Does that go to outer boroughs or mainly Manhattan?
I have been to Brooklyn. I am not an expert in Brooklyn.
Okay.
I have sold in Brooklyn where it's somebody who knows me and they say, here's what I want to buy, here's where it is, but I want to work with you.
Got it.
And that's fine, because the transactions are the transactions. But I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in Brooklyn.
Okay.
I'm not, but I can go there.
So what's different from, Westport, Connecticut to Manhattan? What kind of...
It's great. I love it. It's so much more business-like in Manhattan. It's really about numbers, and apartments are not as individual and unique as homes. So many people in Westport would say to me, I want to fall in love with my house. And I would just roll my eyes. I know how much money you have. I know where you want to be. There's 4 houses. Here are the 4 best choices. Just pick one and don't drive me crazy. But here, you don't get that. It's like, here's my budget, here's my neighborhood, here's what I need. Okay, here are some good choices. And they get it, and they pick one, because it's an apartment.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit more interchangeable. People don't necessarily entertain in their apartments.
Right.
It
They maybe see
doesn't-
one kid so they can, put the
Right.
crib in the living room.
Right. It doesn't say so much to the world about who you are as people feel a house does. It's more of a commodity, and people know to make decisions. They have their finances together, or we get them together very quickly. It's much more straightforward, and I really like working here. I like the speed. I like the focus.
Does the market ever change where more people are renting than buying in Manhattan, or buying and renting? Like,
The market changes all the time, and when you say the market,
I think that's like the
what,
cloud.
What is that? It's
I
like
don't know
the
what it
cloud,
is.
right? The cloud. Every building in Manhattan is its own neighborhood. If I'm looking for something so you can understand if the price is right on a particular apartment, we look first at what's sold in the building, because the building is the neighborhood, and every building is different.
And most businesses have like a common charge or a keep charge.
Well, the big difference that you have to understand is between a condo and a co-op.
Okay, explain that.
So co-ops are really only in New York and mostly in Manhattan, and not anywhere else in the country. So if you're coming from anywhere else in the country or the world, you're going to land on this island of Manhattan and go, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You are not buying real estate when you buy a co-op.
Okay.
You are legally, it's not real estate. You are buying shares in a corporation, and it comes with what's called a proprietary lease that allows you to occupy an apartment. but you do not own the walls of that apartment. The building owns it, and you own shares in the building.
Got it.
When you buy a condo, it's like you bought a house. You are buying real estate. And even though we call it a mortgage on a co-op, it's not a mortgage, it's a share loan. So when you're working with a bank, you have to make sure you're working with a bank that works in the city and they know what these are, and not some internet bank or some,
Right.
Some like, I'm gonna get a mortgage online, where they've never heard of co-op.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to buy a condo. I guess, what would my next steps be with you, Amber? You know, like, you just take a peek at my bank account, like,
We would have a quick conversation, would
Mhm.
understand where your income comes from. Your assets would be your bank account, your credit, as well as the collateral.
okay.
So here in New York, to go off Susan said, with the condos and co-ops, with a co-op that comes with a maintenance payment. And then with a condo, you have principal and interest, which is your mortgage payment, as well as common charges, taxes, and walls and insurance, because you do own what's inside the walls. So we would run over your scenario and calculate what's called the debt to income ratio, so showing your income divided by your obligations and your credit report, as well as your housing obligation, and make sure that you would qualify for the transaction. At which point we would then provide you with a pre-approval letter, and then you would go out with your realtor, find a new home. But here in New York, we have to approve the borrower as well as the building. So every building is different, and not every lender lends in every building.
Okay.
And to go back on it is because some buildings are rentals, however you can buy in them. But depending on the owner occupancy, changes the loan.
Okay.
We also have to make sure in the building in which you're purchasing in, what the down payment requirements are, because for a co-op, they do have rules.
So you have to, like, 10
So-
times your income? or-
Well, some co-ops only allow 50% financing. Some co-ops allow 60% financing. Much more normal is 70 to 75% financing. So if you think you're getting a 90% mortgage, you're not buying a co-op. Because co-ops make their own rules. It's like
I should have been a building developer.
that was a long time ago. They're not building them anymore. Yeah. It's like, and that's also why when the mortgage crisis hit in 2005, Manhattan wasn't as affected as the rest of the country, because the co-ops, which are 80% of the housing in Manhattan, did not allow screwy loans. They didn't allow liar loans, no,
Yeah, it seems
no
like there's
doc loans.
quite the vetting
They
process.
wouldn't allow it. So they stayed pretty stable. There wasn't a big foreclosure crisis here because of that.
They have boards, and boards must also approve the transaction as well as the lender.
How do you get on a board of a co-op? Are you automatically on when you're a
No,
resident?
you have to be a resident, and then once you're a resident for a couple of years, you can apply to be on the board. And they have elections, they have different
Different
methods.
processes.
Every building is different.
So you also have to do your due diligence, because they just mentioned a whole lot of things, especially like a bank that deals with Manhattan properties and probably located in Manhattan as
Yes.
well, because they know the ins and outs. So
Right.
we have these two lovely people
Right.
right here. Okay, so is there one, you said you don't ask people for like vanity things when they're looking for an apartment, but is there one like common something that someone says when they come to you and say I want a property, like that you notice more and more? Is there a trend happening?
I don't know that it's a trend, but light is really important.
Especially in Manhattan.
And especially Manhattan, and light costs money.
So does exposed brick?
No.
Not
no,
anymore, that was 5
no,
years ago?
No. If you want a view and light, so there could be two apartments that are identical in the same building, and one is on the 3rd floor and looks at another building, and the other is on the 12th floor and has an open view. So identical apartments, identical condition. The one with the view is going to cost quite a lot more. And even in new developments, when they're pricing apartments in new development buildings that are being built, every floor there's an increase in price. Same apartment, just it goes up every
Okay.
floor.
And if you're the building developer or the seller of an apartment, you just kind of contact the real estate firm for them to come post your listing?
Are you talking about a new development
Or any apartment?
Any apartment. Yeah, it's very much buyers and sellers. It's pretty similar. You might have a real estate professional that you know, that you've worked with in the past, that does a lot of work in your building, who a friend recommended to you, who you met in an Uber or a Via, and you have a relationship. And you want to know what company they're with, you want to see what kind of marketing they do, you want to know that they know how to get you to a successful closing, because really, anyone can show you an apartment. Anyone can take you to lunch and be charming. Getting from there to a closing, that's where it gets complicated.
The legwork happens. So what is that legwork? So you start with Amber.
You have to be approved. You have to know that you're in the price range that you can afford. Okay. The numbers are going to work for you at the end of the day. Without that, there's no point.
And is that the majority of the problems if someone isn't approved, like they don't have the down payment, or it's just a combination of not enough for a down payment and not enough to maintain a monthly mortgage that the bank sees?
It could also be a change of job. So you were a W-2 salaried employee, and then you go to self-employed.
Right.
And generally, when someone's self-employed for the first 3 years, their tax returns don't show all of their income because there's certain loopholes maybe that they could use for tax purposes. And it's just finding the right lender to understand their profession. Are they in the same line of work? It's a a question. It's a little bit of details that we go through as far as 2 years tax returns, 2 most recent pay stubs, understanding where the assets are coming from. Can they get a gift, or their credit as well? What are the credit scores? How many trade lines do they have? Do they have a history of paying bills? So it could be a combination of a lot of different factors.
Gotcha.
So up front, we do a lot of due diligence and have a 5 to 10 minute conversation, just so everyone understands and they're comfortable. You also have to make sure that somebody's comfortable with the payment and the mortgage payment and where rates are.
So it's kind of a one conversation with you, then we move to you.
It could be a week, it could be 5 years. I once showed someone houses for 7 years. And
I think I remember this story.
Yeah, and then when she finally found the one, she said to me, well, what would I do here? Would I tear it down or would I renovate? And I really said this, what do you care? You're not going to buy it anyway. After 7 years, I'm entitled, and they bought it.
It's those stories that keep you going.
So you never know. I mean, you can go from nothing and get one phone call and your life changes.
Yeah.
But it just the day-to-day, how do you get from point A to point B? Find something you like, negotiate a price that feels right to both sides. I mean, everybody is a little happy, everybody's a little unhappy, then I think that's a good deal.
That's a good feeling.
It's a collaborative thing. And then if it's a co-op, which often it is, and condos also are doing more due diligence on the buyers these days, we have to do a board package. Now, a board package can be 200 to 400 pages. It's your entire financial history of your life, letters of recommendation. It's the worst term paper you have ever seen in your life. I like doing board packages because to me it's a combination of scavenger hunt, and also it's so concrete. I have a list of 25 things that I have to put together for you. And I know if I just go down the list and do all these things, at the end of the day, it's going to be done. It's very. The rest of my business is so abstract, and this is really concrete. So I like it. I've never had, knock on wood, a board turned down.
Ooh.
And it's a matter of explaining your finances, who you are, where you come from, what you're like, to a group of strangers that we've never met, that we don't know anything about them, we don't know anything about their financial background. So I put it together so anyone could understand it.
Do you think that the board actually reads the whole thing?
I have had one or two people on the board, maybe not everyone, but I have had buyers come back to me and say, we went for our interview and they said it was the best board package they've ever seen. They said we should tell our realtor. And I said, I've heard it before. Because to me, it has to be absolutely clear.
Right.
And if I can figure it all out, then I can explain it to anyone else.
Well, you take pride in your
I
work.
do,
and
I do, and my highlighters and my color dividers.
Sign me up. In Manhattan, so Hudson Yards just opened.
I was at the opening party.
You were at
Yeah.
Neiman Marcus?
Yeah.
Nice.
The whole thing, yeah.
Are we seeing a shift that way? Like, is that booming? Like, or what's around there? Or
when
what?
you have, in the building that just opened, 35, apartments start at $5 million.
Okay.
So that is a certain demographic.
Mm-hmm.
That's not for everyone,
Mhm.
obviously. There are rental buildings and there is gonna be some mix, but I think there's a lot of interest in it. People are excited about it. There's a subway stop right there, which is key.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of new development in Manhattan.
Right.
And people have a lot of choices. And at the $5 million net price range, they have a lot of choices. And we'll see.
Are there specific pockets of Manhattan that, you know, without a couple or, you know, two people walking into a room and telling you where they ideally want to be, like, you can just guess, like, if they have a family, can you just guess that they want to be on the Upper West Side? Or...
No, I don't, but they're really quick to tell me, so I don't really have to guess. I live on the Upper West Side, so I do end up meeting a lot of people and working a lot on the Upper West Side, but my office is on the Upper East Side, and I've worked downtown, uptown, Harlem, the Village, I mean, everywhere. It's kind of a great city, and I like being in different areas.
Is there anything that you want to tell maybe prospective buyers, you know, now or maybe 2 years down the road, prospective buyers that they should have in line before, you know,
Yes.
they kind of start?
Know where your tax returns are. 3 years of tax returns. Know where they are. Know how to find your W-2s or your 1099s or whatever, however you show that you get paid. And when you start hearing what you need to do for a board package, don't freak out. Just take it one thing at a time. I'll talk you through it, or whoever you are, because we'll just talk you through it and we'll get it together. Just keep track of your financial stuff and don't freak out. That's all.
Are there, for those letters of recommendation, are there particular people, or can you like go to your best friend to write a letter? Like, who do you recommend for?
If you know someone or your family knows someone who lives in a co-op and is on the board of a co-op, that's my number one pick. It should be something really personal. So your best friend, if your best friend is employed and has, you know,
and on the board, check.
You know, and we can do a nice like heading on their letter, not, you know, just like I had a client once who had her manicurist and her house cleaner because I don't think she really had a lot of friends, and that, you know, we can't really use things like that. Someone you've worked with, sometimes they have business and personal references that they want, so people you've worked with, but the more personal it is, longtime family, friends, clergy, members, doctors, you know, just people who've known you and your family for a long time and really speak personally, because they can't all be the same. They actually read them, and if everything looks the same, like it was from a form letter, it's not gonna go. You can't do it. So they have to be personal, they have to have a little anecdote, and they have to seem like they're from a credible individual.
My husband always says, "Don't burn bridges." So
Oh no,
never. Even if it's just like an ex-coworker or, you know, ex-boss, always say hi, you know, and not that you're asking for something or that you're looking for them to give you something. Just keep in touch, so that you're always top of mind with someone, and they can always like reflect back on that.
Right, absolutely.
And what about you, Amber? Anything that anybody should have ready before
I
they
would
come
recommend
to you?
reviewing your credit to see what your credit score is.
Is like Credit Karma a good thing to do it, or you need a more serious?
There's some other sites, because each entity that runs credit is different. So running credit for a car, running credit for a credit card, and running credit for a mortgage, they're all graded differently.
I don't know.
So there are sites that you could go to that
Specifically
for mortgages, right? And they don't show up as an inquiry, so a client can get an idea of their scores and what is on there. So sometimes they'll have a medical collection, they don't even know it could be $5.
Right.
But maybe if you don't have a lot of other things to be graded on, it could, you know, show up as a negative, and then you want to correct that prior to going for a mortgage. And if you have time, then I would recommend that. Agree with Susan, get your paperwork in order. For mortgages, it's generally 2, but 3 years never hurts. And once it's all in order, it can be reviewed rather quickly and makes it a lot more seamless, because there are time restrictions when getting a mortgage as far as having a mortgage contingency, and that means that you're getting a mortgage so your down payment's not in jeopardy. 5 days after you're approved, you generally need to get that board package in if it is a co-op. So you have to, there are just different timing.
So like kind of once you hit the ground, you gotta go.
Yeah, you gotta go.
And you wanna go,
Yeah.
because the longer things wait, paperwork has a shelf life.
Right.
So you don't wanna keep updating it several times, and every time you get a new bank statement, if there's a large deposit.
Here we go again.
You have to source it, because there are, for mortgages, anti-money laundering rules and regulations, so large deposits need to be sourced, and gifts are okay.
Oh, and just, there's also something called aging a gift. So a co-op usually won't go back more than 3 months. So if a family member is gonna give you a cash gift to help with the down payment, as long as it's in your account for 3 months, we're not gonna have to explain where it came from.
Okay.
It could be your own money.
Yeah.
So you just wanna have all of that in order, and if you are getting a gift, you wanna know how much,
Okay.
when it's being deposited, or could it be in there for just kind of timing of everything.
So let's say my clients, they just get married, so hopefully they have a ton of envelopes.
Nice.
And what's a good thing? Do they put them right in the bank and like savings?
Hopefully they have a great financial advisor and they invest wisely, but if they're thinking about purchasing, they're gonna need a big wad of cash for a down payment. And whether that comes from gifts or family, or whether, they've just been very successful and you don't want to tie up the money.
Right.
So that
So as
you
long as it's
can't
in the account
access
for
it.
3 months. Okay. And then I had a question. Slipped my mind. I'll come back to it.
Come back.
It was a good one too. Okay, so we've learned a lot. I have learned a ton here. Is there anything else that you want to speak to regarding purchasing?
I just want to say it can be really fun. We have a really good time. People are so excited when they get their apartment, and then I feel like now you're part of my family, and I want to know when you have kids. I want to help your kids find their first apartment when they grow up. I'll still be here, and I actually have people coming back to me after 20 years, and I do help their kids, and now they want to sell the house that they bought 20 years ago from me in Connecticut and buy an apartment in New York. And I had someone just last summer who, their youngest, who was a baby, when I met them, just went to college, they were ready for an apartment on Central Park West and called me. And it's really, that's what I love. It's the relationships.
Do you still get wowed when you walk into some apartments? It takes a lot.
Not so much. Yeah, it takes a lot.
It
It takes a lot. Mostly, for me, it's always the view. Yeah. That if I'm gonna get wowed, I've seen so many fancy apartments. I really like things that are more personal and not so decorated and so done, and it doesn't have to be so tasteful. I like to see some personality, but that's just.
Is it really true that when you're trying to sell your place, you really need to like declutter it and?
Oh, you have to absolutely professionally stage it. And this is a tough market for sellers. It's a great market for buyers. Great.
Okay.
And it's a challenging market for sellers. And I am now having people completely professionally stage houses and apartments, and they're transformed. And then when you price it correctly and you have it look, so the other thing is that everyone is looking at pictures.
Right.
If they don't like your pictures, they're not gonna come see your house or your apartment. They're not gonna come. You're not gonna get them if they don't like the pictures. So if you've been living in your space for the last 50 years, which many people have, and you love it and it's exactly what you want, that's great. But that's not what the buyers, and the buyers are mostly young, it's not what they're looking for. And they don't get it, and they don't understand that they could transform it and make it their own. They have to see it. So if you're selling, talk to me and I'll tell you what we're doing, because it is an investment of time and money, but it can be the difference between selling and not selling.
Right. So that's a big
It's
tip right there.
It's really big. Yeah.
All right, so I think all of you should, if you're thinking of purchasing a property, party, you should talk to Susan and then chat with Amber.
Yeah.
I think they're a team. They
Good
go very
team.
well
They're a
together.
good team.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
good team.
Yeah.
It's
We're
good.
dressed alike.
It is best to have a good team on your
Yeah.
side
You need a
because
team.
it will make the process a lot easier and seamless.
And you're experts in it,
Yes.
so you might as well
Yeah.
showcase all of that
Yeah.
and share your talents with the world.
Thank you.
This was so fun. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.